kids going to devices is kind of like leaking water. You can fix a leaking tap or a pipe in one spot, the water will come out somewhere else. You keep plugging the dike everywhere else and the water will come somewhere else. Same happens with kids. You take this away, they'll go to the next one, they'll go to the next one. I'm like a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 22. Although I probably started earlier, I was picking strawberries when I was raising Mount Macedon and selling them on the side of the street when I was sort of 13 or 14. So I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. From the ages of 22 to 35, I was busy with a couple of companies, tech companies, and that was a good learning experience. And then after that, one of my goals was to be
Welcome to DevReady podcast, where we're helping non-techs build great tech. Today, joined by Peter, one of the founders of ScreenCoach. They're run by a group company called Life Tech Balance. Peter's been in this game for pre-COVID, so 5-6 years. I'll let him tell his story. Building a product that supports families, monitoring screen time, and then how we might reward kids with that. Plus, I think there's some rewarding around some other things that we'll discuss. In a position where he's been spent a lot of money on product and invested a lot over the journey, and now looking to scale and really grow this thing. Peter, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Andrew. Excited to be here. I guess with your sort of initial sort of goal saying help non-tech savvy people get into tech, ScreenCoach is certainly not that. It's an extremely complex thing. We're trying to make something super complex usable by the general user.
At the end, the product becomes a simplicity, but it's more around how do we productize certain things to a point, right? So, yeah. Peter, tell me about you. So for the audience, just give a bit of background on your story and then how you came to the concept of ScreenCoach in the first place.
Certainly. Now, do you want the 5-minute version or the 5-hour version? Because I can talk about myself for hours.
We've got time, so I'll direct you if you forget too far.
No worries. Well, Melbourne, what used to be known as one of the world's most livable cities. But, you know, I won't get into politics and talk about why that's far from the case anymore. So look, I'm like a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 22. Although I probably started earlier, I was picking strawberries when I was raising Mount Macedon and selling them on the side of the street when I was sort of 13 or 14. So I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit and trying to get ahead. My brothers would, after picking strawberries, would go back in the house and do nothing. I was doing something more to get ahead. And that's kind of an underlying philosophy, what ScreenCoach is about, to teach kids about what they can do more to get more pocket money, get more screen time and so on. I started ScreenCoach about 5 years ago. I didn't really need to. I've got I part own another company that does enterprise software in the government space for emergency management and also some compliance. But I previously had a couple of companies that I sold and I semi-retired when I was 35. So, from the ages of 22 to 35, I was busy with a couple of companies, tech companies. And that was a good learning experience. And then after that, one of my goals was to be a stay-at-home dad and to pay off my house and kind of, chill out. And, I got bored pretty quickly.
You can get bored, yeah, I think, yeah. Let's talk about the exits for a minute, because that's always a fascinating one. So 22, what was the first business that you started after the strawberry selling, of course?
Yeah, it was a company called Dynamic Solutions. That was an outsourced IT company. And the reason why I started that was because I was actually working and studying at Melbourne Uni. So I was doing my computer science degree and I went part-time and I had a job as the IT manager at the Melbourne Uni Student Union. And I was dealing with and I had a lot of responsibility for quite a young person. And I was dealing with a whole lot of incompetent people externally, and also the politics of the place within the uni. And all my friends worked for large companies, all were telling me about the same thing. And I said, stuff this, I can do better. So, so I went out into the wild world and started my first company.
Oh, brilliant. So that was consulting on building tech, from what I'm hearing.
A combination of things. Like we would, like an outsourced IT department, so providing hardware, on-site services. I was doing programming services. I, in fact, purchased an internet service providing company back in the days when internet was new. And some of you, it depends on how old your audience are. We had racks of modems. People were dialing in. We had websites back in the early days when people didn't even know what websites were. So I kind of saw, the future well ahead of where it was going.
Yeah, so you've been around the traps quite a bit. So exited some businesses at 35. sat around, got bored by the sound of it.
Well, yes and no.
What happened? Tell me about that.
Well, I became a bit of a personal development junkie. So during that time, I was doing heaps of personal development courses. In fact, I became a qualified life coach. I did a bit of life and business coaching for a while. I got a bit frustrated doing life coach. So I focused more on business owners, and I couldn't help myself. And I decided to get back involved. When the companies that I sort of purchased 25% of, when I sort of did my exits, I was a director. So I decided to get back involved with them and help transform them to become a product company instead of a services company. And part of that was because one of the things I kind of learned during that personal development phase was that this time around, I want things to be different. Like I'm looking to make a change. I want to make the world a better place. In fact, there's a guy called Dr. John D. Martini. I did lots of his personal development courses, and he's really big on values-based education, focused on what's highest in someone's values to help motivate and inspire them. And in fact, this has later on become a fundamental principle of ScreenCoach to motivate kids based on screen time and pocket money. But he wrote a book on how to make a hell of a profit and still go to heaven.
I haven't heard of that book, actually. I know John D. Martini, but I haven't heard of that book. So I'll have to look at it.
That really resonates with me because the principle of that is if you want to make a profit by making the world a better place, how can you help the world be a better place? And that's the whole principle that I really love about it. And obviously it's a twist on words to get people to buy the book or read the book. But so he's in fact, we interviewed him when we launched our beta product. So he's a lovely guy, and he travels the world teaching lots of personal development concepts. So a lot of the things I've done throughout my whole life has led me to this point.
I'll ask you a question about one of those things you mentioned around. It's off the topic of ScreenCoach for a second. You mentioned that you walked into this company and consulted in how to turn them from a service-based to a product-based company. Complex beast to navigate that because the people that you have in services are not necessarily going to people that you're going to have by the end of a product. How did you approach that and venture that? Because a few people that I speak to have struggled in that area significantly. Yeah.
Look, my partners in the business, it took a while for them because they started the business, and I came in when they were already going for like 12 years or so. So what was able to convince them to do was focus on our core product, which is the emergency management space. But in doing so, you have to got to stop doing the ongoing time and materials based work. So what I did is I actually got a telemarketer to ring a whole lot of other Victorian-based software development firms and see who might want to buy Darling's customers.
Okay.
And then we found a few, and then I spoke to them, and I found a company that, because I wanted to find a good home. I didn't want to just say to people, look,
you don't want to just dump them off. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. In fact, one of my things is in any relationship, it should be a win-win for everyone. And I want everyone to come away from a relationship being happy that they've dealt with me or my companies. So the same thing for DataLink that's been around for quite a while. So we were able to find a company that we could then sort of speak to the customers, and some of them have longer and shorter different periods, and transition them across. So it was I think it was done in a nice and respectful way to keep them happy and help us transition to where we wanted to go.
So it's an interesting point. You burnt the bridges, so you couldn't go back. Just sold off all the customers, so you had to go that way. Yeah, because sometimes you can play in two camps. It doesn't really work. So that's what I was saying.
That's right. I mean, the product was already well under development that we're moving towards. So it's not like we sort of burn the bridge and go, oh, what next? So it was done, I think, in a pretty strategic way.
No, brilliant. That's good insight for people. Jump back to ScreenCoach now, just to unpack that a little bit. When did the idea come to fruition for you? What year was it? Was it around your kids? Because obviously, I imagine that's where it stemmed from, but I could be wrong. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, it's a combination of my own kids, and also I had another original partner. In fact, my original business coach called me up one day and goes, Pete, I've got this great idea.
Love that call, don't you? You've been in IT forever. How many times have you heard that?
That's right, yeah. In fact, I've talked a lot of people out of going into business. So I'm a practical person. Even when I was a business coach, I actually spoke to some people and said, I don't think you really should be doing this. So it's not good for recurring revenue, but, just trying to do the right thing for people. So he calls me up and he goes, I've got this great idea. And I said, look, Gary, it's too hard. I looked at this a couple of years ago, and I did. So a couple of years earlier, I'd spent a whole lot of time with, I'll give you my backstory, and I said, it's just too complex. And he just nagged me. He goes, are you sure it can be done? I go, no, look, it's too hard. I said, look, technology changes. I'll have a look at it. And I had a look. I said, look, it's doable. And because he was a sales guy, I said, look, what I learned from my previous businesses was that you can be the best tech person, you can have the best product, but if you can't sell it, it's not going to succeed. So I thought, well, what better to go into business with a salesman? So the whole idea was good. But long story short is when the funding ran out, he had to go get a job. So,
okay.
But anyway,
so
if I wasn't
left with the business. Yes.
Yeah. So when the but it was his sort of I guess motivation to make me do it, because it was such a big project. Like at the start, I said to him, "This is like a $5 million project, because you can't just have something that works on one platform." When my oldest was about 14 or probably 15, they're moving from like iPad
let's ask that question. Why can't you have something that works on one platform, at least for the beginning? Yeah,
well, I'll explain this through our own story, because kids going to devices is kind of like leaking water. You can fix a leaking tap or a pipe in one spot, the water will come out somewhere else. You keep plugging the dike everywhere else and the water will come somewhere else. Same happens with kids. You take this away, they'll go to the next one, they'll go to the next one. And so my oldest had a Windows PC, had an iPad, had a Mac, had a PlayStation.
So had everything.
Had it all. So going from A to B to C to D. So
okay.
And I purchased some of the leading solutions on the market. Like there were some big players in the market already back then, and they were technically flawed, and they also were just like using the stick only. It's like you get this much screen time, bang, you're done. So in fact, I bought some router-based solutions. You block the internet. I bought a solution that was router-based. It worked once. Because the kids are smart. They realize, hang around, the next time the internet blocks, I'm going to have offline games ready to go. I'm going to have downloaded video content. So, yeah, great.
They're not silly.
That's right. So my view is like, so when I decided to build it, I was going to build something that's going to work offline and not online. And you're a tech guy, and I can probably impress you with the tech.
Yeah, especially in the Apple side. It's
how deep
even harder. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
That's right. So So part of it was going to be work, because a lot of them use VPNs and other things like that, which means it's going to cause problems if they're trying to go to school or use them in other environments and stuff like that. So I had a lot of sort of technological goals and constraints that made it harder, but it's going to make it better in the long run. So anyway, so that's why I tried all the solutions and they didn't work. I built, and then I even did my own old-fashioned sticker chart. Do this, earn this much screen time, do that. I did it for a little while, but it's just too hard to maintain.
It becomes, the manual process becomes difficult to maintain. I agree with that. Like you can start something and then a month later it sort of falls off and then you lose that and then it's gone. So if you know something that's managed, like anything, right? So in a business, if you've got a process or a system, it makes it easier. If someone's just doing a scratch pad, then things can get lost. Same thing.
I've had a lot of people go, I've had that idea too. I say, great, do you want to give us a few $1,000,000 that you'd need to spend on an idea? And that'll help us accelerate us, because it's really difficult. So that's why I kind of had to have something that works on iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows. We even invented a hardware box, which is quite ironic, because I swore I'd never get involved with hardware, and I did that. I mean, as a parent, I also swore my daughter would never play with Barbies, and she did. So, and she'd never wear pink, and she loved pink. So, there's lots.
They choose their own adventure. Let's put it that way.
That's right. So I think in life you need to be agile. So you might have goals and aspirations. I wanted to homeschool my kids because I think the schooling system is greatly lacking, and that might be a future aim of mine. It's something I'd like to come back to, but I realised how important socialisation is for children. So that's why I sort of thought, well, education is secondary. It's the socialisation and learning to live and deal with others is more important than what they're learning.
Yeah, it can be a lot more important. What you're learning at school generally, you throw in the bin by the time you get out of it. So
that's right. Yeah,
that's the challenge in the system. But anyway, would agree with that one. With you. Yeah, lots of issues there. So
look, it's been a long journey along the path, but the thing for me that's interesting, especially because I've done a lot of personal development, is I realised that I love what I do with data link with emergency management, because I can't remember if I mentioned earlier, my family got burnt out in a bushfire when I was young.
You were in Macedon, Macedon Rangers.
In Macedon. Yeah, and primary school, everything.
Lots of fires through.
It was pretty bad. And we had to, we lived in people's lounge rooms for a while. We had lived in caravans and granny flats on the property. And so I know what it's like to be impacted, which is why it was really important for me with what we're doing with CrisisWorks software, which is, we've got 75 Victorian councils that use it for all phases of emergency management. And that include, particularly, they do a lot of time in the relief and recovery. So families, when they get impacted, that they can be impacted for a year, 18 months, 2 years. And so the councils in Victoria take a big...
Oh, it's a long process, right? Especially if you go through and you get lots of homes that are destroyed. It's not easy to pick and move hundreds of people.
That's right. So post all my personal development, I was feeling really motivated and inspired for that, because we're helping the people help the people. Yeah. And it's kind of the same principle for me now with ScreenCoach. I'm highly motivated and inspired and excited by ScreenCoach. Like right now, I'm kind of become alert and awake. Before speaking to you, I was kind of half asleep. I drove back to
So it lights you up. It's a passion project, really.
That's right. Like every time I talk about ScreenCoach, I get energy from nowhere and I become highly motivated. It really resonates with, it's my highest purpose. So I don't care to be famous or anything like that.
What's the vision you have for ScreenCoach? What the impact do you want to have? Because obviously there's a passion behind what lights you up. What's the impact you're looking to have?
Yeah, well, it's global. It's not just in Australia. I want ScreenCoach to help children and families around the world. I want to teach kids that they can do more, to get more. They can change their circumstances. I want to coach them into new and healthy habits and routines. It also teaches them, because they learn delayed gratification. For example, they can earn screen time tokens today and they can use them tomorrow and the day after. They can save them up. And we also can convert. So your kids can earn screen time tokens and pocket money gems, and the gems can be converted to money. So we're teaching lots of delayed gratification and savings as well. So we have a whole virtual money system, like a whole pocket money management system as well, like a virtual bank account. So we're teaching financial literacy, savings, return on effort. So we're teaching a lot of positive things, and we even have other positive psychology within the app. So that if you, for example, you're a parent of 3 kids, when you ask your kids to do something multiple times, the smile comes off your face a little bit and then can get grumpy.
Can.
Yeah. But with ScreenCoach, you can motivate children. Like if they, for example, do an activity like empty the dishwasher, you might say, we'll give you 3 tokens for that. But if they do it straight away, they might get a 20% bonus. But if they do it without being asked, they might get a 200% bonus. So you can use additional positive psychology reward system to encourage the behaviour change. And it's not just about chores.
I have someone I'll introduce you to after our podcast, by the way. I think it'd be worth a conversation. Yeah, who knows? We'll see.
Well, thanks. That's part of the reason for doing the podcast is, I'm looking to broaden my net a bit. I'd love to attract a business partner with a strong sales and marketing background with business growth, or investors that might want to come on board and help invest in this, because this is really going to go global.
The premise of it makes sense, right? So I think every parent out there has dealt with the frustration of screens, what to do with them, what not. For me, we had the chat offline. My kids don't have access to an iPad, really. So there's no YouTube, there's nothing in my house. They can watch a movie, they can do stuff like that, but I don't really engage in the socials or anything. They're quite young, they're 9, 7, 3, so don't know how to handle that, but they're going to get older and it's not going to work forever. Managing it, encouraging them to do watch good content online, and you see what's going on with government. They're trying to stick their 2 cents in, but there's very good reasons why. Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other topic. We can have a whole podcast to talk about the geniuses that came up with the policy.
It's always done by geniuses, but anyway, we won't go there. So, the vision is to get global impact, support kids to. I think it's more change behaviour. It's also encourage. Yeah.
It is. So it's really a behavioural change system. We use screen time and pocket money to encourage and motivate that behavioural change, and instead of saying, hey, you shouldn't use the screens, we actually block the apps. So it's more than just, hey, you shouldn't use them now. It's actually like, right there, you can't use them. It'll say, hey, you need to earn more tokens, or you can't use it now at this time of the day, or you have. And in fact, we've even got some other awesome things, such as you can have an activity that has consequences. So let's just say to your kids that you can only use your screen times to play games, say after 5 p.m. if you've done your homework, and if it's not done, all of the modes that allow games to be played will block all of those games and only allow the apps that might allow educational apps. So it's actually like, they've got to do what they've got to do. So yes, it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a brilliant concept. But it's something that I think we're just getting the message out there and what we're up to. In terms of the application itself, I understand the complexity of the technology, especially when you go to iOS, it's even harder. How long have you been building the tech for? So
we started
developing.
We started building in 2020, and we started off with a bit of really quickly, but then funding became very difficult, so I had to trim that right back. So with that one, we've gone a lot slower. So that's why people might say, "Oh, you've been around for for ages now." But the problem is, with limited funding, we've had to stretch that as far as we can. So that's why we've effectively, when we launched with a public beta, and we've been continuing to improve it as we go. So I've done a lot of support myself, and so what I'm hearing the questions from people, I'm getting feedback, finding what the issues are. So we're continuing to improve it because it's so complex. On each of the platforms, it has its own nuances as to why it may or may not work, and different versions, like with Android as well. Like there's multiple variants of Android as well, and that makes it even more complex.
That's a fair point. In terms of lots of different versions and pieces on Android. And then, okay.
In fact, I mentioned earlier that I said I wouldn't get involved with hardware and so on. A long time ago, I did a project. In fact, when I was at Melbourne Uni, I did a computer science project that was used in the computer lab that would monitor the amount of time people would spend on the computer and also charge them for printing. So it sounds very similar to ScreenCoach. So it's interesting how way back then I did a project that in hindsight was along the side.
Connected in some capacity, that's brilliant.
And it had to work at the low level of the operating system, and it was so complex. I said, I'm never going to do anything at low level of the operating system again. And here's another one of those I'll nevers that I kind of kicked aside and says, I know more now than I did then. So
well, it's a challenging project, right? So it creates a moat. Technology is challenging, and then from a perspective of, you mentioned that sales, marketing, driving this out. It's currently a B2C product, so direct to consumer. So you're selling to mums and dads, right? So that's the pain point would be there enough, you'd imagine. How have you approached the marketing sales angle? What does it look like?
There's only been small amounts. Like we did get some exposure in the early stages when we were in beta and so on. And so on. We got a TV interview on, I think.
I saw Channel 7 and I think the morning show.
One on Channel 7, and we also had one on A Current Affair, which was in the early stages. So if we had it right now, would be better. But then again, not many people watch TV anymore. So the value of being on TV, aside from the kudos of saying, "Hey, we're on TV," the value I don't think is really there anymore. So we really need the biggest thing that would really help would be influencers and people to say, "Hey, this is great," and then to grow that way. But most influencers want to charge for helping people these days rather than that of good cause.
Have you done any just direct social marketing for this product?
Look, only very small amounts because I've got no one to do it. So that's part of the challenge. So that's why, that's why we really need someone to help with getting that done. So I've been continuing to.
I think your direct social will be working, but your price point for a product is quite low too, right? So,
that's right. It's very low. So what I'd like to work towards is keeping it as a price point for our maybe a cutback part of our features, and then introduce a higher end plan because we've got a lot of flexibility because everyone wants to parent in a different way, and ScreenCoach is really flexible. They can work in many different ways. So that way we might sort of hide some of the features on a limited plan.
So what's this project taught you? What have you learned going through the motions of where you are today? You've got a product that's probably commercially ready, but then there's another level of that, right? So getting to a product to this point, then how do we really commercialise and get traction? What's it taught you working through this over the past 6 years or so? Well,
this project is very different to a lot of others. A lot of other people might want to have a project where they might want a basic app, which can be just a glorified web browser with a wrapper around it. It's really easy to build like a web app that just works online only. So the complexity of this project, like I knew from day one, this was going to be like a $5 million project, and we're still well within that. But this is really complex, and I knew we were going to need a lot of money. And at the time, the economy was so much better. It was much easier to get investors as well. People were investing in ideas, and we had ideas, and I built a prototype as well, and so able to demonstrate a very crude prototype as a concept, and we're getting investors in the early stages. So part of what I've learned is it's difficult because we've had a lot of unique circumstances. We've had wars, we've had pandemics, and we've had the economies are gone.
There's lots of change and shifts over those few years, yes.
That's right. So, so a lot of people also talk about, a lot of alleged experts say, build a quick and dirty prototype, get some customers, get some funding, and exit and get out, or with your money, build it again. But with what we've done, you can't actually do that. It's too complex because it works at the low level and it blocks apps on the operating systems. You can't build something quick and dirty because it's just not going to work. And then if you're in the public domain, everyone's going to can you, give you bad reviews, bad ratings. So it's much more difficult to do that with what we're doing. So it depends on the sort of business someone wants to start as to what kind of advice I'd give them. If it's as complex as this, I'd say make sure you're going to get the money for it. And I was quite confident we were going to get the money. I thought this would be a no-brainer to get investors. And in the early stages, everyone thought this was fantastic and said, hey, I'll put in some money. But the closer we got to the finish line, it became even harder because of the fact that interest rates went up. So we've had a lot of people say to us, oh, great idea. Come back to us when you've got at least $10,000 revenue per month or at least, a couple of thousand customers. And it's like, well, when I'm at that point, we may not need any investment because the thing will...
Yeah, it takes off from there. Yep, understood.
Because people can get 8 to 10% of return on investment on low-risk investments. So why are they going to invest in a startup? Whereas previously, people could only get like 2 or 3% on low-risk investments. So they say, well, you know what?
It's shifted. It has, and a lot of the attention really has gone to anything AI, especially for an investment city. So
that's right.
That's where a lot of the capital has flowed to, which has changed the landscape quite a bit in terms of that as well.
And we are using AI in our system. We want to use a lot more, but again, I need some funding to do that. I've got big plans. I've got huge plans. I don't want to disclose them here. But yeah, not just with AI, with other things as well. So look, at the moment, we're only just passing first base of where I want to get to from a functionality perspective.
It comes down to that technology predicament, right? Building a technology startup. We've got to build the product and then we've got to commercialize it. There's two parts to a business, right?
Yeah.
But when you're in a heavy technology investment product, which is what you are, it becomes harder. And I think, like anything, it's like a hardware product. It's more difficult than a software product. There's a lot more investment up front, and you're in a similar boat. There's a lot more investment into product itself, and that building that quick and nasty product that doesn't work, that you can get customers on, yes. I think I've tried a couple of them and they're garbage out there because they don't work, and then you lose them in a month anyway, so there's no point to that. So you're in that sort of sticky point of, yes, you need massive upfront capital to make it work, and then the flow-on effect is proving customers only comes after that.
But with where we're at right now, we could take on 10,000 customers overnight. So we're built to scale. In fact, we've made it multilingual. We've just released Spanish, and we're looking to put in Portuguese and looking to put in some more languages. In fact, I spoke to a guy from Finland. He's got a massive following on I think his YouTube channel. And I said, well, that might give me motivation to add Finnish as a language in there. So it's been very well engineered in the back end. Every string in the system is in a database. So we can change every string in the system. So it's been very well engineered, built to scale. In fact, we choose, from a tech perspective, one of the other things I said I wouldn't do is I wouldn't use one of these alleged write once, deploy multiple times approaches, because in the past they didn't work. But again, this is one of those things where I had an open mind, and we chose something called Flutter, which is a programming language.
Flutter. We're more of a React Native side, but Flutter similar, different.
And this is part of the thing where we're very well engineered. So this is part of our competitive advantage, is that we've got one code base for all of our platforms. We've got the five platforms. They're all using Flutter. And if we want to make a change to some parts, for example, where you modify an activity, it'll automatically update in all the platforms. And it's got a database, and like we're using a NoSQL database that syncs for offline and offline. So it's very well engineered. As we scale up, the costs will be low. So everything's kind of built for scale and profitability. So I built it to be a long-term business.
It's a big long-term play.
That's right. It's a long-term play, but also if I get an investor that wants to buy us out, I'll say yes at the right price. However, I don't want someone to shelve it. The dream has to go on. I've done this
Okay.
to make a change in the world. I haven't done this to make a few bucks. If I wanted to make some bucks, I wouldn't have done this, and I would have stayed doing what I've done.
That's something else. Yeah, I get it. In terms of path and channels to market, you mentioned maybe schools. You were an ISP owner, you said at one point. Could an ISP drive an angle of a product like this to market? Because they've got the consumers there.
Anywhere where someone's got a big database, you can. Because the thing is that, and it could be a bank. So that's why I need some B2B people to be able to go to.
Could be a bank connection to the saving and the education around that and how it all took. Yes.
Health insurance, because what we're doing is healthy. Because
A few different angles there.
screen time, it has a big impact on on kids' physical and mental health and well-being. So it's really a digital well-being solution. So it's effectively, it's got its toe in many places, but the problem is it's not in one. Now, how do you categorize your business? Is it A, B, C, or D? Well, none of them. It's a bit of all. So it's really, that's why with the right people to get the right connections, like imagine having the National Australia Bank or the Commonwealth Bank promote ScreenCoach because it's great for families. Teaches financial.
Yeah, that's probably an angle that you need to just really lift the can off it and make it move. Yeah, I get it, because there's big angles for them to drive value from a product like this.
That's right. I mean, helping families, like what better is there to help families? Because the other thing is, well, I mentioned about the effect on the kids, but in a family where kids and parents are arguing about screen time, they're colliding every single day. So this battle, because screens are so high in the kids' values, they want it, they'll nag, they'll whinge, they'll complain, they get some, they run out, they whinge. But there's other solutions where you say, we'll give you 2 hours a day. As soon as time's up, complaints, fights. So you have the Groundhog Day every day of the fights. Whereas with ScreenCoach, you eliminate that. What you do is you change the relationship. So the parents and their children now have a different relationship, because now the ScreenCoach is sort of the bad guy, but it's also not, because kids go, oh, if I run out of screen time, I can earn more. Or I can do this to earn some pocket money. So when they run out of their time, they know within the reasonable rules. Like obviously they're not going to use screens at 3 a.m. in the morning. We stop you at bedtime and so on. That they can earn more screen time, and they know that they can earn them today and use them tomorrow. So what it does is it eliminates the arguments. It reestablishes a more healthy relationship between parent and child. And this is another big problem that we have in households. So that's why it's not just the kids; we're helping the families.
That's a brilliant concept in my mind, Peter, and I think every parent would agree that there's some angle here that could definitely assist in a family environment. Screens are a big thing. But then I think the other angles around screens are the behavioural pieces. There's a bit there.
In fact, we were just did a podcast interview that was released a couple of days ago. I think it was called Chaos and Caffeine Podcast, and they focus on ADHD. And so I realised later in life that I had ADHD, and I didn't realise until a number of years ago. But because I did so much sport, I was coding when I was 13, and I was playing sport 6 or 7 days a week. So I was always keeping active, and I didn't realise that I naturally found the perfect balance. And I've turned it into a superpower for me. Whereas these days, when kids say they've got ADHD, they're now a victim. They've got a label. You want to drug the kids.
Yeah, it's a fascinating way we approach things.
Yeah,
because there are benefits to those. It's a way of thinking, really. It's an impact. Yeah,
it's a superpower. Like seriously, I can get so much more done than most people because you can have hyper focus. When I'm really focused, a bomb can go off near me, and I wouldn't even know. I'm just really focused when you get in the zone. So even though there is ADHD, there's the other sides of it as well. But there's good. Look, with most things in life, there's good and bad. You've got to figure out, well, how do you reduce the negative sides, and how do you make the most out of the positives?
You mentioned, I think, the carrot and the stick. So there's other angles. This provides a carrot and a bit of a stick for kids to actually earn something as well. They just show that they can earn something and get rewarded for it, not just bang, screens off, and then you start the arguments. At least they know how to get it back on. So it's a good positive.
That's right. Why complain when you know that you can fix the problem yourself?
Do something about it. Yeah, that's exactly. Right. Yeah. If anyone wants to find out more about ScreenCoach, go to myscreencoach.com. Pete, I wish you all the best in this. And like I said, I'll do an introduction to someone that has potentially some alignment to what you're doing. I feel like there could be a good conversation, at least, if anything. But if anyone wants to find out more about ScreenCoach beyond the website, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, look on the website. We've got an AI support system. You say you want to speak to a human, it'll get flicked onto me, and then I can get in contact. Or we've also got online inquiries as well. So look, I'd certainly love families to give it a go to help themselves. And if anyone knows someone that might be interested to potentially invest or become a partner to help change the world, and something that's going to be massively lucrative as well, it's going to be a win-win. So let's make a hell of a profit and still go to heaven.
Go back to I might have to read that book. Thanks, Peter. I really appreciate you coming on and joining us today on the DevReady podcast.
Thanks. Lovely to meet you. Thanks, Andrew. Bye.
Thank you.